Hi, this is Tug PSX, and today we're going to be talking about MDBridge for Daz Studio. MDBridge should be installed in the My Daz library under MDBridge. So the files will extract to this location, and in here you'll have the um, MDBridge 2 Beta. You may actually have a few other icons, but as you can see, there's a couple I've got here. Anyway, so my figure is loaded. It happens to be a Genesis 8 and it is selected. So from this location, I will go ahead and launch MDBridge. You'll get a little pop-up that tells you about how to use the program and a couple of quick examples on what it's used for. So we'll go ahead and launch the application. On this first page, you'll be presented with options, preferences, uh, building the Python script, and poses. For now, we can just go ahead and set a pose location. We've just selected a location from Daz Studio that contains a few poses. So you will need to set up your preferences. On your preference, you're going to have to choose the location where Marvelous Designer is located. Your folder where you'd like to import, export your figure and clothing from Daz 3D to Marvelous Designer, and the location of your Python script. The Python script, there's one provided, but more than likely you may need to edit it. To edit your Python script or build one, you can use the Build Python tab. So for now, we'll leave that pose. So the first thing you want to do um, after starting this and setting the locations, you can set up figure. So by clicking on setup figure, this is going to export um, this base settings to Marvelous Designer. So what it did was it exported your previous pose along with an A pose and a T pose to Marvelous Designer. Using the start MDBridge will launch Marvelous Designer. Just so happened in this case, this is Marvelous Designer 9.5. It should work with the other versions. And when Marvelous Designer starts, it's going to automatically start the MDBridge application. So once that comes into play, we're going to go ahead and import our exported avatar. So we're in Marvelous Designer here, and right here you have your MDBridge. Since we're creating clothing or fitting existing clothing to our character, we'll select our A pose and say set. So we've chosen set, and that should load in your character in its A pose. And if we just to go through here, we can go to a T pose and say morph to, which will morph to the T pose. Since the character is not clothed, he will just snap into place. And we can then also look at morph to the pose that's presented in Daz. So at this point, we can go to auto and have that ready. Actually, why don't we put some clothing on the character first? So we're going to go ahead and go back to our A pose, morph to our A pose. And here we have some clothing that was built in Marvelous Designer for other Marvelous Designer character. This shirt looks like it could be okay. Let's just grab that, drag that, drop it on the character, say okay, and that will load in momentarily. Once the clothing in this particular case is loaded, or you can build your own clothing from scratch. Go ahead, select all the cloth, and you're going to kind of line it up on the character. This allows that various characters that you use or figures that you use, avatars that you use, should be able to fit. Marvelous Designer newer versions have abilities to automatically snap the clothes in place. There are a few features in here also that allows you to do that, but this is not about how to use Marvelous Designer in this respect. All right, so we'll grab the arm piece here, drag it out a little bit, just so as that it's on the character. Rotate a little, just that it lines up a bit. We'll do the same for the opposite one. I think the newer version of Marvelous Designer actually has a symmetry option that will allow you to move both of them at the same time. Okay, and we can probably drag them out just a little bit. Okay, so press the space bar and your clothing will be fitted to the character, albeit a little bit bunched up in the back, but it works. So if we were to go back to the bridge and say, let's choose morph to the posed avatar, your clothing is getting the cloth morphed into the shape that you're needing. And if we jump back over here to Daz, your Daz character is actually in a T pose, not in that pose anymore. So if you're going to send the clothing, if you're just looking to send the clothing directly back to Daz, then you more than likely want to assume that pose that the character was in. Okay, and we have selected that pose, and there you go. All right, so over here, you could actually just send this clothing right back to from Marvelous Designer to Daz Studio, and the clothing will fit to the character. But if you need the clothing to actually move along with the character when you pose the character in Daz, then you're going to want to set the character to an A pose. But just to say we want to test a few poses to see if the clothing that we're about to send is going to work for us. Let's see what happens if we were to, let's say, all right, let me see if I can drag this out a little bit. If we were to, say, select any of these other poses. So just selected a pose here, and we did set this to auto, I think. Let's see. So on the MD tab, there's an option, the Marvelous Designer Bridge tab. It's set for pose here. If you say auto pose, all right, actually, let's do this. If we do leave it at manual and say morph to, it's going to morph to the pose that was made over here in Daz. Cloth might be, in a few cases, depend on what it is that you've done with it. It may get tangled. There are ways to play around with Marvelous Designer to ensure that that doesn't happen. Dragging your cloth around. Now, for the best effect, if you were to say auto pose, and now back in Daz Studio, if you select a pose, you'll see momentarily that the pose should update in Marvelous Designer. If it doesn't go right off the bat, there are options here to send the figure and poses to Marvelous Designer. There's a timer that Marvelous Designer is running on, and that timer will depend on what happens with the clothing. Looks like in this case we've chosen previous pose that dragged the arm out of the clothing. So getting that back in can be a task in itself, or we could simply grab the arm that we think and stop the simulation and move it into place. And start your simulation again and hope that you know, pull it around until it fits. But as I said, if you're trying to get a cloth that you're able to pose in Daz Studio, then it's in your best interest to export your character in the A pose. So let's go ahead and get back to our bridge. And now if we are trying to get this guy back into an A pose, if you were to hit set to A pose, the character will stand up, but the simulation won't run with that particular pose. So you want to do a morph too. And once you do morph to your A pose, your character morphs back into his A pose. And then you might stand a chance of being able to, in this case, repair the arm or the sleeve of the shirt. All right, there we go. Drag it around until it kind of fits a little bit. And you can set your cloth. Now, your settings for your cloth should actually transfer to Marvelous Designer also. Okay. All right. So let's send this clothing back to Daz so that we can actually pose the character in Daz. So once you've got your clothing made, we're going to do export garment. In a few seconds, it will export it. There we go. That garment is exported. Now it's not automatically imported into Daz 3D because depending on the pose that you've got, obviously that clothing would not fit the guy that's sitting on the floor. So you'd have to go here and set your avatar back to its A pose. And now if we were to import the garment, and here you're going to go ahead and select your Genesis 8 and current pose. And we're bringing in the clothing, so select the clothing by default. We can do show option here, reverse. You can turn smoothing on if you want to. You have all your options you can play around with. We're going to do accept. And voila, the clothing is loaded onto your character. And it's actually being fitted to the character, so no matter what poses you put in Daz Studio, that clothing should follow. So if we were to go here and select wave or something, your character, there you go. Clothing is actually fitting to the character in Daz Studio. You can go back and make whatever changes that you need to. If you want to drag a few morph updates or any of that into the clothing, you can do it like that. Go into Marvelous Designer, simulate that same pose again, and export it for future use. Again, this is Tug PSX from the Daz Studios. If you've got any questions regarding the MDBridge, please reach out to us. Have a great day.